okay, don't take this the wrong way, but you guys have been around. Okay, you've probably seen it all before. You've stood at a lot of conferences. You've said there's an imperative to do this, that, and the other. This government's got to do this, that, and the other. Do you sense that anything has changed since Howard Davis first started looking at this question, and now we've got one government in rather than a coalition? Have things changed over the last 3 years that encourage you, or do you just think we've been here before?
Look, in many ways, not much has changed. We're still back to the perennial problem of any type of strategic infrastructure. Ultimately, it's not just a commercial need, it's a political decision. And so we're back in that political decision phase. I think perhaps what has changed a little bit is I think the opposition to the delivery of the Davis Commission's recommendation has hardened, and it's sort of coming to a point. And I think that's probably the big...
Political opposition?
I think political opposition. Now, clearly, political opposition doesn't exist in a vacuum. It needs community support. So, the people have to support it. But it can be used as a tool. And I think what we're seeing at the moment is that sort of coming together of both of those and a hardening of opinion. And I think that's going to make this decision harder than it is. But it's quite clear that from a commercial, from an economic point of view, from a public benefit point of view, this is very, very important. This decision is crucial.
I'll stick with you for just a second, because you mentioned Boris. You've been on the wrong end of that kind of politics. I mean, he's becoming an increasingly powerful man. What's he like to deal with? What kind of conversations do you have with him? Is he absolutely rigid? What do you think he's going to do in the next couple of years?
I don't think even Boris knows what he's going to do in the next couple of years. From minute to minute, it might be quite difficult. I mean, Boris is fine to deal with. I mean, he's a very accomplished politician. He's a very intelligent man. He has a particular viewpoint, and you've got to respect that viewpoint. It's a difficult situation for me as CEO of an airport like London City, trying to persuade him that we need to move ahead and to deliver the type of capacity I spoke about for the type of benefits I spoke about. I think we'll get there. I'm absolutely confident that we'll go through the system, we'll get there. My great regret is, and I've got almost 30 years of dealing with strategic infrastructure. My great regret is when I started off on the career, I believed that it would improve. Over time, we would get better at delivering strategic infrastructure decisions more efficiently and quicker. And I'm not seeing that. I think it's getting harder and harder and harder to deliver those decisions. I think Boris's position on London City, but also on Heathrow, is a manifestation of that. I think we have a planning system in this country which is far too democratic. And I think that democracy is slowing us down. It's losing opportunity. We heard from the CBI yesterday a £30 billion loss of economic benefit and opportunity. Simply, it baked into this process. When you look at what the government is facing in terms of reducing the deficit and the scramble it's going to take to deliver £12 billion worth of cuts, just throwing away 30 billion of opportunity is crazy. We've got to try and move this system together for the benefit of everyone.
I'm sure people will have questions on that democracy comment in a bit. But Andrew, I mean, it wasn't that long ago Stansted was meant to have another runway. Do you feel that it's different now, or is it just circular?
Well, I mean, I've been at Stansted 2 years, so I can't speak for what happened before then. But I think what does seem to have happened is that there's a broad feeling, a broad view that actually we're coming towards the end of the line. If you talk to politicians of every persuasion, they will say that, we're reaching a tipping point really where capacity is really going to start to damage us. So therefore, back to the analogy of optimist with a raincoat, I am pretty optimistic that people get the issues. The thing that worries me is that this point about how will the points made by Davis be acted upon. 2 years ago, he talked about rail connectivity to Stansted being urgent, and really nothing's happened. And so for me, the big miss that we still have is this link between economic growth, the aviation and the aviation capacity, and then the rail capacity. Those things don't really appear to be joined up. And if I go back to the Stansted point, not only would it make Stansted aviation capacity more attractive, but in the way that it could be done, it would also make the commuters in and out of London up to Cambridge. It would make that whole corridor work better. And so therefore it doesn't just benefit, you know, the people who want to catch a flight out. It also benefits the people who want to get up and down the corridor and make that economic activity in that region work, which links back to the overarching principle of trying to drive the economy and trying to drive growth and jobs.
I am one of those Cambridge commuters, so I'm well up for that. Nick, am I right in thinking you were at Stansted?
Yes, I
in
was.
those days?
Yes, I
When we're
was, and
talking
I have
about
the scars on my back to prove it. Yes, I was at Stansted when we increased the limit from 25 million to 35 million. And there are a number of people in the room that put in a robust argument against that. We prevailed, but then, of course, government policy changed over the back end of 28 to 2010, and the white paper that was the framework at the time then started to be slowly disemboweled when the argument about the environment was a very strong argument, and it wasn't adequately addressed in the original paper. So far as the political position, going back to your original question, is concerned, I think Davis is the chance to recharge and reset the perspective on the value of aviation to our country, our island country. And I think it's the opportunity now that the politicians should take where we can give them confidence. I'm not here to attack the politicians about how they approach this industry. That is their role to do. They're elected to do that. But what I would try and encourage them to do is develop a level of confidence about what this industry is about, acknowledging there are consequences of aviation. We know that. Noise and emissions are the two core issues of aviation. But look at the context of the benefit. A planning inspector will do that. He looks at, or she looks at, the nature of the overall benefit of a scheme versus the environmental harm. And so far as aviation is concerned, that assessment of how valuable these things are versus the inevitable harm is generally massively packed in favour of the economic benefit. But we need to, as an industry, we need to address as much as we can our impacts on the environment. We also need to make sure the politicians are comfortable and understand those positions, how we can improve, how we can mitigate the consequences. But at the end of the day, we should be brave and we should go for it. We need to deliver this industry because we are located in, probably, in my view, certainly, the best city in the world. And it probably will get better. And we need to make sure the politicians can understand what contribution our industry can make and let them give us the framework we can then invest. This is all private investment. This is the whole debate we're talking about. Yes, there's an argument about roads being buried at Heathrow and Gatwick have some small contribution required to make their scheme work. But the point is, the overwhelming amount of investment going in is private, and it has huge benefits. And I think that argument has been lost over the last few years, and I think Davis is the first step to try and rebalance the debate, but recognise there are diseconomies of growing an airport.
Paul Blond, International Air Rail Organisation. Firstly, Declan, I think you should look at your map again with the location of airports, because I have a feeling that Heathrow is in London. It's in the London Borough of Hillingdon, and I think the name does say anything. But my question to all three is about how to get this policy support, I think Nick described it as. And do you think that policy support for both potential growth at all three of your airports and indeed the integrated transport policy which you asked for, and I know, I'm delighted to hear you all have plans for improved rail access, Crossrail station, improved Stansted access, and Nick, I know you're thinking about how to link Luton Parkway station. Do you think a national policy statement, which Phil Graham talked about and which we might hear some more about today, will provide you with that sufficient level of policy support for both the growth of your airports and indeed the integrated transport proposals?
Okay, start with Nick.
Yeah, it's fundamental to have it. I mean, investment only goes where it's welcome. I mean, let's be clear about this. We're dealing in an international and a global investment market, and if we make it difficult for ourselves, that investment will go and find other homes very quickly. Our airline partners have assets which amazingly have wings on that make those assets very, very easy to move. And we need to have the facilities that keep those assets, which are rare assets. There is not a glut of aircraft in the world. And if we don't deliver the infrastructure to support the businesses like EasyJet, Emirates, all of these airlines, they will ultimately get frustrated and go elsewhere, to other countries, to other continents. And we can't allow that to happen. We have to be as competitive as we can be. So getting the national policy guidance is crucial for us as investors to go ahead with confidence and go for it. I mean, we have to take 30 to 40-year time horizons. Our airlines can evacuate our airports in about 40 minutes. And we have to continually convince them and plan and deliver on the investment to make sure that their own enormous investment will be rewarded and accommodated in the UK. The UK is a sensational market, but we need to keep on investing. That national policy support allows us to give them the confidence that the investment will follow.
I agree with that. I think that we absolutely need the policy position, but also we need the delivery mechanic to deliver. Because, you know, and I accept Nick's point that it's around, you know, having the confidence to invest. But if we were investing on the basis of the CP5, Control Period 5 of rail enhancements that were in the plan, and then looking at what has been delivered and what hasn't, then, you know, all the policies in the world can't legislate for non-delivery. So I think it's critically important that we've got a delivery mechanism that can deliver to the policies, and also that we find a way of aligning the control periods of investment in rail with the decisions that come out of other bits of major infrastructure like aviation. Because it seems silly that there is a recommendation that comes out of somebody who's been appointed by the government to look at aviation, how best use can be made of that, amongst other things. And actually the first opportunity to get something into the rail, something urgent into the rail plans is 5 or 6 or 7 years into the future. So delivery and policy need to go together.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think the issue is that the policy is fragmented at the moment. I think if Davis can do anything to serve us better, it's to focus the government's attention on the need to coordinate a new policy framework. If that policy framework is put in place and rigorously followed, it'll provide the structures we need to implement some of these changes we've been talking about and to deliver some of the benefits. Because I think you mentioned earlier on during the previous panel, the industry has had a difficult time persuading the government how beneficial it is to the UK. The airports industry in the UK employs over 1 million people and delivers £52 billion worth of economic benefit to the economy every year. We have been really poor at getting that message across. Granted, there's a lot of people who don't want to hear it, but you've got to get better at getting that message out. I think we get better at putting that message out, and I think an enhanced policy framework will benefit us all with regard to the delivery of infrastructure.
I think there's an additional point to add to that, is that this marginal capacity that we have available at Stansted ourselves and potentially at City is probably the cheapest capacity you can bring online quickly. It's largely there. It needs to be encouraged and enhanced by tweaks in rail timetables, giving priority to rail links to our airports so they can compete between each other and drive our costs and our prices down in doing so. So there's many, many quick wins that flow from this, whilst the debate for Heathrow or Gatwick rumbles on.
There are people who might look at this and think you've got space and no one's filling that space. So actually, more of it should come down to you to attract airlines, because right now, they'll want to go, well, not all of them, but a lot of them want to go to Heathrow. That's where they make their money, and maybe you're not selling yourselves well enough to the airlines.
Well, I don't have that problem. I have a queue of airlines waiting to come into London City. The problem I have is I need the permission to put the concrete on the ground to actually take advantage of a permission I've already been given. And this is this fracturing, this sort of dislocated thinking. We're given planning permission to grow the number of flights at an airport, but we can't get the permission to put the concrete on the ground to enable a permission you've already been given. I mean, that's plain crazy.
Andrew, you've got a big deal with Ryanair. Do you think that puts off other airlines coming to your airport?
Well, you'd have to ask the other airlines. But I think, we've got deals in place with our existing carriers, and we're 2 years in. We've started, well, we're now long into conversations with other carriers who don't understand really Stansted, I guess is probably the best way of putting it, in terms of, the way that London is developing and changing. And I guess, you're absolutely right. Part of an airport's job is to make sure that we are able to represent the regions that we serve. No one flies to an airport, they fly to a region. And there's a certain amount of emerging from single ownership, where all of the airports were run as a system of airports under under previous ownership. There is a bit about now each airport, Gatwick, Stansted and Heathrow, of the former BAA airports, being able to tell, that, if you like, their own story. And this is the point about competition and thriving. So we're 2 years into that, and you know the growth is looking good. 17% so far this year. So 17% in the last 12 months. New full-service schedule carriers announcing in Stansted, and we hope in the not-too-distant future more to do the same thing. So as far as we're concerned, we're really pleased about the momentum that Stansted is building. But it is about creating this story and making sure that the airline execs who are sitting overseas, as I was last week on Wednesday when it came out, and they really understand that actually there's another option than just what's being debated by the Davis Commission.
Yeah, Nick, when you're abroad and you're selling your airport, I mean, do people know exactly where it is? I mean, not to be, disparaging about it, but is there a lack of awareness of what is around apart from Heathrow and Gatwick?
Well, historically, Heathrow has always been seen as London Airport. I think the reality is we're dealing with a system of airports, a system of runways for a city that is just, as I said earlier, the best city, probably the greatest city in the world right now, and likely to continue to be so. We've got a collective responsibility to deliver capacity, because there will be spill across the airports. There always has been, that will continue. We as an airport have to drive down our costs and make sure we're as efficient as we can be and fight in the market. That's what we're there to do. We don't have a particular challenge dealing with Luton, because they always look at London. Luckily, they don't have Declan's map. They look at London and see us as being part of that London system. And as a consequence of that, we have no challenge with forecasts at the moment for traffic. We are technically full with the capacity we have. That's why we're investing 110 million. And June was our busiest month in our 77-year history. And we expect July and August to be busier than that. So we are rapidly running out of capacity. It isn't an issue of having the space, the demand for the space that we've got. It's about making sure our facilities are ahead of the game. And rail is the core issue. We have great train times into Luton, 21 minutes on certain trains and 35 on others, which is fabulous. What we don't have is that final connection. The last mile of the journey is not as well connected as it should be. So our focus is on that. But we need the policy support to make sure the tens and hundreds of millions that my shareholders are putting into it is assured with policy that is clear in support of aviation. And that at the moment is lacking.
We're very short of time. I'm going to give you one sentence. If the government could do one thing, what would it be? Cut tax or improve the trains? One thing that would make the biggest difference, what would it be?
Get out of the way and let us do it.
Yeah, I think it would be join up their strategic decisions between rail and aviation and deliver them.
I think publicly be ultra ambitious about the benefits of aviation, recognising the cost, but having a commitment to sort that out.